Hey everyone, welcome to another Deep Dive.
And today we're tackling a pretty fascinating idea
Okay.
from the political philosopher Hannah Arendt.
All right.
It's this kind of counterintuitive concept
Yeah.
that facing hardship can actually lead to a deeper kind of happiness.
It's definitely a thought-provoking idea.
We'll be focusing on
One that I think
excerpts from her book,
our usual assumptions about happiness.
Men in Dark Times.
We tend to think of happiness as something we achieve when things are going well in our lives.
And we'll be bringing in
But Arendt suggests there's another path,
some additional analysis
one that emerges from the experience of being an outsider.
to unpack this complex concept.
So let's start with this idea of being an outsider.
Okay.
Arendt uses the term pariah peoples.
To describe groups who've been pushed to the margins of society, often facing persecution and discrimination.
And for Arendt, this wasn't just an abstract concept.
She was a Jewish intellectual who fled Nazi Germany.
Right.
So this was her lived reality.
And it's within these groups.
Facing these incredibly difficult circumstances.
Yes.
That Arendt saw something unexpected emerge.
A special kind of humanity.
That she even called a privilege.
A privilege.
Yeah, a privilege.
Mhm.
I mean, how can being ostracized and oppressed be considered a privilege?
That's a really good question.
It seems like the opposite of what we usually associate with that word.
Yeah, it seems totally counterintuitive.
But this is where Arndt's thinking gets really interesting.
Okay.
She's not minimizing the suffering of these groups at all.
But she's pointing out that within that shared hardship,
Yeah.
there's also an opportunity for a depth of human connection.
That's rarely found elsewhere.
It's built on this radical openness to others.
A kind of deep empathy and understanding that
Yeah.
goes beyond just feeling sorry for someone.
So it's like this intense situation
Forces people to rely on each other.
in a way that creates a truly profound bond.
Yeah, and a sense of solidarity that you don't find in other circumstances.
But
The sources mention that.
Arendt also acknowledged the downsides of this outsiderdom.
Right.
It's not all sunshine and roses.
Exactly. She uses the term worldlessness.
To describe the potential for isolation
Okay.
and detachment from the broader world that can come with being part of a marginalized group.
So imagine you're part of a community.
It's constantly under threat,
Yeah.
facing prejudice and exclusion,
It makes sense that you would turn inward.
focusing on the safety and support of your own group.
Right.
But that can also lead to a sense of disconnection from the larger society.
Which comes with its own set of challenges.
It makes sense.
It's like building a world within a world.
Which can be both protective and limiting.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this deep connection within outsider groups.
But how does that tie into the idea of happiness?
Where does joy fit into this picture?
Well, Arendt believed that the true test of this radical openness.
Lies not just in sharing sorrow, but also in sharing joy.
Okay.
Oh, I think about it.
Think about it. Joy is naturally expressive.
Joy?
It makes you want to talk,
Yeah.
to laugh, to connect with others.
It's that feeling when you can't wait to tell your friend.
It invites dialogue and genuine human interaction.
About something amazing that happened, right?
Exactly.
Like you want to share that excitement with someone who gets it.
And Arendt saw this as a fundamental element of what it means to be human.
She even connected it back to Aristotle's ideas on friendship.
And the importance of sharing happiness with those we trust.
She argued that genuine human connection that brings real joy
Is more likely to be found in these intensely personal experiences of friendship.
than in some abstract notion of belonging to a larger group.
So while shared suffering might initially bring people together,
It's the moments of shared joy
that really solidify those bonds.
and deepen the connection.
Right.
And this brings us to another key concept in Arndt's thinking.
The importance of action.
Yes, action.
Arendt believed that action is crucial for creating a humane world.
Not just because it's done by humans,
But because it becomes something we can talk about
reflect on.
and learn from together.
Okay.
She argued that we learn to be human
By engaging in the world through action.
and then discussing and making sense of those actions with others.
So it's not enough to just do things.
We have to actually talk about what we're doing.
Understand the impact of our actions.
Right.
And learn from each other's experiences.
Exactly.
And this is where the openness to others.
That are observed in outsider groups becomes so important.
It creates a space for genuine dialogue and exchange of perspectives.
Which is essential for building a more humane and interconnected world.
It's like the more we understand each other's motivations and experiences.
The better equipped we are to create a world that works for everyone.
Yeah.
And speaking of creating a world that works for everyone,
Let's bring in Arendt's exploration of the pursuit of happiness itself.
Okay.
This is where things get particularly fascinating,
Because Arendt dives into the history of this idea.
tracing it back to the French Revolution, its concept of public happiness
She then analyzes the subtle but significant shift,
that Thomas Jefferson made in the Declaration of Independence
changing life, liberty, and property.
to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Right, and she explores this further in her work, Thinking Without a Banister.
Yeah, you mentioned that word change earlier.
What's the big deal about swapping out property?
For the pursuit of happiness.
It seems small.
It seems like a small detail.
Right.
And Arendt points out that it went largely unnoticed.
And undebated at the time.
But she saw it as a profound moment.
A shift that reflected the American revolutionaries' vision for a new kind of society.
They understood happiness not just as an individual feeling,
Okay.
but as something vital for the public good.
Intertwined with their ideas about freedom and tyranny
So if tyranny was about banishing citizens
from the public realm,
and forcing them into strictly private lives
then freedom must involve creating a space for public action.
where happiness can be cultivated.
Yes.
It's not just about individual rights.
But about creating a society that supports the well-being of all its citizens.
Exactly.
And Arendt argues that the pursuit of happiness actually
A
requires,
space for action in the public realm.
which is precisely what tyranny seeks to destroy.
Wow.
It's like saying that to be truly happy,
We need not only personal fulfillment,
but also a sense of belonging and purpose within our community.
a place where we can actively contribute and make a difference.
That's a powerful idea.
And it connects back to something you mentioned earlier.
This idea that action is essential for creating a humane world.
Yes.
It's not enough to just focus on our own private happiness.
We have to actively engage in the world around us.
And work towards the common good.
Exactly.
And that's where things get even more intriguing.
Okay.
Because Arendt connects her ideas about action in the public realm,
To her exploration of Augustine's philosophy.
particularly his thoughts on time and eternity.
Hold on. We're about to go full-on philosophy nerd here.
Maybe a little.
I'm ready for it.
But let's make sure our listeners can follow along.
What's the connection between Augustine's ideas?
And this pursuit of a truly meaningful happiness.
It's all about understanding the nature of happiness itself.
Okay.
Augustine believed that happiness, when it's rooted in possessions,
We're external things.
is constantly under threat from the fear of loss. He argued that true happiness requires something more.
Something that transcends the limitations of our material world.
That makes sense.
You know, if your happiness depends on something outside of yourself.
You're always going to be worried about losing it.
Exactly.
But how do we find that kind of happiness?
The kind that isn't dependent on external circumstances.
That's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Arendt takes Augustine's ideas
Okay.
and weaves them into her own fascinating concept,
Of the timeless now.
suggesting that true happiness might lie in embracing the present moment.
In a way that connects us to something larger than ourselves.
This is already blowing my mind a little.
I'm hooked.
We'll be back after a quick break.
To continue unraveling these ideas.
All right, we're back and ready to dive even deeper into this idea of a timeless now or day.
Before the break, we were talking about Augustine's belief that true happiness,
Can't be found in material possession.
because those things can be lost.
Right.
So where do we find that lasting kind of happiness?
This is where Augustine's concept of memory comes in.
He saw memory as a kind of space where time can be held and measured.
Almost like a container for our experiences.
Okay.
It's the place where the no more of the past,
Meets the not yet of the future.
all within the now of our awareness.
I think I'm starting to grasp this.
It's like our memories allow us to hold on to fleeting moments.
Of joy or love.
Even after they've passed,
Yeah,
they become part of us, shaping our understanding of ourselves in the world,
precisely. And for Augustine, this act of remembering
of bringing past and future into the present.
is what gives time itself meaning.
Now, Arendt takes this idea and expands on it.
With her concept of the timeless,
You've used that phrase a few times now.
and I'm still trying to fully wrap my head around it.
It sounds a bit mystical, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Can you break it down a bit more?
It's not about escaping time altogether,
But rather about experiencing the fullness of the present moment.
in a way that connects us to something larger than ourselves,
Think of it as the point,
where past, present, and future converge.
offering a glimpse into something that transcends our everyday understanding of time.
You know, it's making me think of those rare moments when you're so absorbed
In what you're doing, so fully present and engaged.
that you lose all track of time.
There's a sense of flow, of
Yeah.
being connected to something beyond the everyday.
Is that kind of what Arendt is talking about?
That's a great example.
Arendt argued that within this timeless, now we can tap into.
A deeper, more enduring kind of happiness.
It's not about acquiring things.
Or achieving goals in the future.
It's about being fully present in the moment.
And recognizing the inherent joy of simply existing.
Of participating in the world around us.
So it's about shifting our perspective.
From constantly chasing happiness in the future.
To embracing the richness of the present moment.
Exactly.
But, we're just talking about
how Arendt saw this capacity for joy.
In groups who had faced intense hardship.
These pariah peoples pushed to the edges of society.
Right.
How does their experience connect to this idea of a timeless knoll?
Well, Arendt observed that outsider groups,
by virtue of their precarious position in society,
often develop a heightened awareness of the present moment.
Their lives are often marked by uncertainty.
Where the future is unpredictable.
And the past might be filled with trauma.
Yeah.
This can lead them to truly value the simple act of being.
The preciousness of each moment.
It's like when you've been through tough times.
You learn to savor the good times even more.
Because you know how fragile they can be.
Exactly.
You don't take things for granted.
And that awareness can open up a space for experiencing the timeless now.
Even in the midst of difficult circumstances.
Think about how within many cultures,
ritual and remembrance play a significant role.
Yeah, like how families have traditions that they pass down through generations.
Or communities have ceremonies to commemorate important events.
Right.
What's the connection there?
Arendt highlighted how outsider groups often rely on storytelling and remembrance.
To create a sense of continuity across time.
Okay.
By remembering and retelling your stories.
They weave together past, present, and future into a tapestry of shared experience.
Connecting to something larger than their individual lives.
So it's like they're creating their own timeless now.
Through the act of storytelling and communal remembering.
Exactly.
And this connects back to Arendt's emphasis on action. Right?
Hey, absolutely.
Arendt believed that action is all about making a mark on the world.
Creating something new that will outlive us.
And continue to shape the course of human events.
But she also acknowledged
that action always involves a certain degree of risk. Right? We can't control the outcome.
And things don't always go according to plan.
It can be kind of scary to put yourself out there.
Especially when the stakes feel high.
She did, and she connects this unpredictability
to the inherent vulnerability of human life.
We're all susceptible to the forces of history, to the whims of fate.
But Arendt argues that this vulnerability is also what makes us human.
It's what allows us to act freely.
To create, to love, to experience joy.
That's a powerful thought.
It's like saying that to embrace the fullness of life.
We have to accept the inherent risks and uncertainties that come with being human.
We can't hide from the world.
Or try to control every outcome.
Exactly. And this is where her ideas about courage and the public realm come into play.
She believed that to pursue happiness, we have to be willing to step outside our comfort zones.
And engage in the world around us.
Even when it feels uncertain or risky.
So it's not enough to just focus on our own private happiness.
We have to be active participants in building a better world.
A world where everyone can flourish. But wasn't Arendt also pretty critical of modern society?
I mean, she saw firsthand the horrors of totalitarian regimes.
And the ways that systems can be used to dehumanize people.
Her vision of the public realm seems a bit idealistic.
In light of all the problems we face today.
Like political corruption and social inequality.
She definitely had her critiques.
And she didn't shy away from confronting the darker aspects of human nature.
But she also held on to a belief in our capacity for growth and change.
She believed that we have the power to learn from our mistakes.
And to create a more just and humane world for ourselves and future generations.
So her message isn't one of despair.
But rather a call to action.
An invitation to participate in shaping the world we want to live in.
Exactly.
It's about taking those insights from the timeless...
that deeper understanding of ourselves.
And our connection to something larger.
And channeling that into meaningful action in the public realm.
Precisely.
And that's what we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
We'll delve into how we can apply these seemingly abstract ideas
to our everyday lives.
Even in the absence of extreme hardship or political upheaval.
I'm really looking forward to that.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
But I feel like we're just starting to unpack the true depth and complexity
of Arendt's thinking.
Agreed. Her work is full of insights that continue to resonate today.
Her challenge to us is to think deeply, to act courageously.
And to never stop striving for a more just and humane world.
Okay, so we've been exploring some pretty heavy concepts,
Outsiderdom, action, public happiness.
even the nature of time itself,
It's a lot to take in,
right?
but I think what's really exciting about Arndt's work,
Is that it's not just some abstract philosophical exercise
these ideas actually have the potential.
to change how we live our lives.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'd love to focus on in this last part of our deep dive.
How can we as individuals,
Take these profound ideas that aren't gleaned
from the experiences of pariah peoples and from thinkers like Augustine,
and apply them to our own everyday lives,
we might not be facing exile,
or grappling with totalitarian regimes,
but Arndt's insights still offer valuable tools.
for navigating the complexities of being human.
That's what always draws me back to Arndt.
You know, she tackles these huge, almost overwhelming concepts.
But she always brings it back to the individual experience. It's like she's saying, hey, I know the world is messy and confusing.
But here's how we can find meaning and purpose within that mess.
Exactly.
So let's start with this idea of openness to others.
Something Arndt saw flourishing in those marginalized groups.
How can we, the listeners,
Cultivate that kind of radical openness in our own lives.
even if it's not forged in the crucible of suffering,
I think it starts with a genuine willingness.
to listen to people who are different from me,
People with different backgrounds.
different beliefs, different life experiences,
It's about truly hearing what they have to say,
without judgment?
or the need to impose my own perspective.
That's a powerful starting point.
Aren't HEIs believed that true dialogue
The kind that fosters understanding and connection,
requires us to step outside of our own limited viewpoints?
and make a real effort to see the world through the eyes of another.
It's about cultivating empathy, for sure,
But also respecting differences.
and recognizing the inherent value of each individual's perspective,
And it's not just about passive listening
right? It's about actively engaging,
with those different perspectives,
asking questions,
challenging your own assumptions.
and being open to changing your mind.
Right.
I love that say.
If you're the smartest person in the room,
You're in the wrong room.
you need that friction
That diversity of thought.
to really grow and learn.
Exactly.
And that ties into Arendt's emphasis on action
Remember, she believed that action brings us into contact with the world.
and with other people.
It's how we make our mark on the world
Create something new.
and leave a legacy,
But taking action can feel really daunting sometimes.
especially in a world that often seems...
Chaotic and unpredictable.
How do we find the courage to act
To step into that public realm.
when the stakes feel so high?
Well, Arndt acknowledged that action always involves risk.
You can't control the outcome.
And things don't always go according to plan.
Right.
But she also believed that this unpredictability,
Is precisely what makes action so powerful.
it's the possibility of creating something new
Of making a difference.
that gives meaning to our lives.
So it's about finding that balance
Between thoughtful deliberation,
and courageous action.
we don't want to jump into things blindly.
But we also don't want to let fear paralyze us.
That's the sweet spot.
And remember, action doesn't have to be on a grand scale to be meaningful.
It can be something as simple as speaking up for what you believe in,
Volunteering in your community.
or just having those deep, thought-provoking conversations with the people in your life
It's about recognizing that each of us has the power.
to make a difference in the world, even in small ways.
And that brings us back to Arndt's idea.
Of the pursuit of happiness as a public good,
It's not just about individual well-being.
but about contributing to a world where everyone has the opportunity to flourish. And that brings us full circle to the concept of the timeless.
Which can feel really abstract.
How can we actually tap into that sense of timeless joy?
That deeper form of happiness that Arndt believed was possible.
For me, it's about cultivating an awareness.
Of the present moment, appreciating the simple joys of being alive.
It's about savoring the beauty of the world around us
The connections we have with others,
and the opportunities we have to make a difference.
however small, in the lives of those around us.
That's beautifully put.
And Arndt also believed that finding joy in the present,
Doesn't mean ignoring the past or fearing the future.
it's about integrating all those aspects of time
Into a richer, more holistic understanding of ourselves.
and our place in the world,
It's about embracing the fullness of the human experience,
with all its joys and sorrows.
its complexities and contradictions,
It's about finding strength in the face of adversity
meaning in a world that often seems meaningless.
and holding on to that spark of hope even when things feel dark.
And that's the true beauty of Arndt's work.
She doesn't offer easy answers,
But she gives us powerful questions to grapple with.
challenging us to engage with the world, with each other, and with ourselves.
in more meaningful ways.
She urges us to never stop searching for that deeper meaning and purpose in our lives.
She's like that wise friend.
Who pushes you to think harder.
To dig deeper.
And to never settle for a superficial understanding of the world.
And that's a pretty incredible gift.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Arendt's thinking,
I hope you, the listener, feel inspired to explore these ideas further.
to engage in those challenging conversations.
And to discover how you can cultivate your own timeless slice now in the world.
We'll be back soon with more thought-provoking explorations.
Until then, keep questioning
Keep seeking.
and keep diving deep